Okay, awesome. So we are recording now. Prof, I would allow you introduce yourself and give us a brief as to why we're having this discussion, and then we can, of course, contribute. Prof, it's over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Jeanpaul Cleron. I am a professor of system dynamics and economics at the American University of Nigeria in Yola, in the north of Nigeria. And I've been in Nigeria for a very long time. I came to Nigeria at a time where I guess very few of you were born, and I've been interested and involved with system dynamics for a very long time. In fact, I worked with the team of Professor Forrester at MIT back in the mid-1970s. And this is where I learned system dynamics, because at that time there was no place to learn it. And I've been in Nigeria since 1987. I've done several things, many things outside of university, but now I have decided that it is time for me to pass what I know to the younger generations. And I share your determination to make system dynamics as well known as possible in this country, because I believe it's a very important tool to improve policy formulation and economic management generally, not only in government, also in the private sector. So I got in touch with your group back in, at least, I guess it was 2020 or 2021, because I contributed to the modeling work for the National Development Plan with the Ministry of Budget, Planning and Finance. I was involved in the building of the model for the period 2025-2050, the long-term modeling for the Nigerian economy. And it is at that time that I got in contact with Dr. Badebo Smith, who was then the Director General of NICER. And it is through his contact that I was contacted by the person who was at that time your president, and who asked me to get involved in, to register to get involved with your group, which I accepted. I did, but I was not very active. And what really got me interested in what you do was first the visit of Professor Stefano Armenia, who is a friend of mine, and the work he did with you people. And what I really was interested in was what Dr. Sobank did when he published that paper, because I think it's a very good way to make system dynamics known in Nigeria. One of the reasons why system dynamics is not more successful than it should be is because we do not know how to promote it. And it's not easy to do so, because I've tried myself, and it's very difficult. But little by little, in Nigeria, it takes long for things to be disseminated in the public. But it is worthwhile. It's really worthwhile doing it. So I think we should continue to do that. At each time there is somebody who talks about system dynamics or who talks about system thinking, it's a very good idea to try to start a conversation. And I thought it was a very good opportunity to do so, even though the conversation was not started very well, because there were quite a number of things that were not quite right in the document that Dr. Sobank published, but it does not matter. And you know, when somebody starts talking about system dynamics or system thinking, we should make a friend of that person, not an enemy, of course, and try to just to help, you know, improve the analysis that the person made. So it's exactly what I try to do, and I try to follow a rule that is, you know, I in fact it's one of the things that I wrote in my chat with you guys. It's that quote from Albert Einstein, who said, we have to try to make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. And that's exactly what I've tried to do. So, and I think the analysis of the exchange rate and the relationship between the exchange rate, the foreign reserves, and the policy to stabilize the economy is very, very important to understand and to analyze, because it's a critical element to promote economic growth in Nigeria, and this is what the country needs foremost. But you see, what I thought had to be corrected in the presentation that the author of the document that Dr. Sobank published was the fact that uh, stabilizing the exchange rate is absolutely essential to you know, to put the economy on a stable on a starting point. And I think the government has been successful doing that. There is so many signs now that it has been. It should be congratulated for that. But what is a mistake is to believe that this will be sufficient to ensure economic growth. It is not. And you can demonstrate that very well by using basic principles of system dynamics and basic principles of economics. And this is what my little diagram does. It's just very simple economics and very simple system dynamics. There is just one thing that is a little bit more complicated. It is how you model the policy formulation. But outside of that, everything is basic. So I think as a general policy, it is a very good idea for you, for the chapter, for the system dynamics chapter Nigeria, to do this kind of exercises. And at each time there is an opportunity, I would encourage every member who comes across a publication, a document in which there is a reference to anything that has to do with system thinking or system dynamics, to let us know, so we can start a conversation. And that will create an awareness of system dynamics. It will show that system dynamics is something that can be very, very useful in government, and it will favor, you know, the development of training. It's a very good idea, just like what you did when you invited Prof. Armenia to do some presentation in your midst. That was an excellent idea, and I feel that, you know, I should contribute to that, and this is why I started to do this. So basically, I'm sorry I've been maybe a little bit long to introduce all this. There is one more thing that I want to add, and this will also interest you. Uh, you know, one of your members with Modibo Sadiq Ibrahim was my very bright student a long time ago, and he has also caught the virus, and he's very interested in system dynamics. He's a member of your board, of your you know, your management team, and he's also very much interested in system dynamics. So together with him and with Professor Armenia, we are trying to establish in my university in Yola a sort of system dynamics lab, and with an approach which is very similar to yours. What we want to do is to promote system dynamics in Nigeria, and to try to get contact with international donors to be able to execute projects. Now, the advantage of having a connection with you people, with your group, is that, as you may know, the American University of Nigeria is the founder of this university is Atiku Abubakar, who is a very well-known politician, an ex-vice president of Nigeria and still very much active in politics. And as it is almost sure that we will have to discuss matters that have something to do with politics, although I personally will always try to be independent from partisan politics. I want to look at it always from the point of view of the analysis of to be as scientific as possible. But there are some areas that it will be maybe a little bit awkward to approach from our system dynamics lab in Yola because of the political repercussion or possible political repercussion of what we'll say. But that will not be the case with your group, with the System Dynamic Society of Nigeria. Therefore, I think it will be useful to try to establish some kind of a relationship. So I think I've said everything in my presentation. I apologize if I've been a little bit long, but now I am ready to start explaining my little diagram if you are happy with that. So please let me know if I can start explaining this diagram.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So you see, what is very interesting is that when you read the press, no, I'm not really declaring conflict of interest. I'm not. We can discuss that later. If excuse me. What I notice when I read the press and that talks about the exchange rate is that there is always a connection. They always put a connection between the exchange rate and the level of foreign reserves. But they never show that connection explicitly. They talk about both of them as if they are related, but they don't show the relationship. And in fact, you understand the process very well if you show the relationship. So this is what I've tried to do here, to show the relationship between the exchange rate and the forex reserve. So in system dynamics, all you need to know in order to understand that diagram is what is a stock, what is a flow, and causality. That's all you need to know. And well, you need to know a little bit more when you introduce policy, but we'll discuss that later. All right, so to understand the process by which, and by the way, this relationship is very well known by the people who have run that policy. And basically, it was the Central Bank of Nigeria. So the CBN people, I am sure, understand system dynamics very well. I don't know if they use it, but they understand the relationship between the exchange rate and the forex reserve very, very well, because I believe that what I have showed on that graph is exactly what they did to stabilize the Naira. So let me start with stocks and flows. Now, both the exchange rate and forex reserve are stocks. They are stocks because, well, for forex reserve is obvious because it's an accumulation of what is for us a commodity, which is dollars or whatever foreign currency you are talking about. And the exchange rate is also a stock because all prices are stocks by definition. And it is a stock because it's not a flow. And in a system dynamics model, you only have stocks and flows, nothing else. All the variables that are in between are just components, either of stocks or flows. The difference between those variables that are not explicitly stocks or flows are variables that are not, that you need only to use in their implicit form. You see, for example, if you study population, well, you can create a stock, an explicit stock, which is the population with birth and death. And then you can create implicit stocks if you have to break your population into cohorts. But those implicit stocks are just variable in your model, but in reality, they are stocks. Or if they are flows, they are explicit flows. they are implicit flows, right? So the explicit flows are the flows that you indicate in your model, and the implicit flows are those that you do not indicate but are there. So in the model that you have under your eyes here, we have three explicit flows. One is the change in exchange rate, which is controlling the stock exchange rate. And the other two are the forex inflow and the forex outflow, which are controlling the foreign reserves. So this is for stocks and flows. So once we have understood that stocks and flows are there, we have to look at how they are connected. Well, what I have done is not a comprehensive representation of the process. It's a simple representation of the process. That means that I have omitted some parameters that are important, but that are not essential for people to understand the process, right? So what I have assumed is that, well, first, the question that you have asked is, why do we need to have a foreign reserve? Well, we need to have a foreign reserve for a number of reasons, but the major reason why we need to have a foreign reserve is to be able to pay for our imports, right? You know, we have to buy things from the rest of the world, and therefore, in order to pay for it, we need their currency. So we have to accumulate that currency. How do we accumulate that currency? Well, by obtaining currency from the rest of the world. And how do we obtain currency from the rest of the world? Well, there are many ways, but one easy way, or the most obvious way to obtain currencies from the rest of the world, is to sell them stuff, right? So it's basically in economics a problem of supply and demand, right? So when you supply your goods to the rest of the world, you make money from your export, and you have an inflow of forex. And when you buy goods from the rest of the world, you have to spend some of your forex, and you have an outflow. And that's exactly how the forex reserve is managed. Of course, as I said, this is a simple representation. There are many more reasons why you want to have foreign reserves, and one of them is to defend the naira if you want to defend the naira, right? But I have not put that into consideration, and I can leave that to you to do. You know, it would be a good exercise to say, well, how do you introduce in that model the defense of the naira? But here I have not put it there, right? So how now do you manage the exchange rate from that process? So what I am describing here is the portion of the model which is between the exchange rate and the foreign reserve, what is on the left bottom of the model. Now I am going to take care of the right top of the model. Good. So what you can do now, you can say, well, what is really the amount of foreign reserve that I desire, excuse me. Those of you who are familiar with system dynamics, and I guess there are a few of you there, know that one of the most common processes that you see in system dynamics is how you adapt a reality to a desire, you know, what I want as opposed to what I need, right? So yes, of course, I see your message, yes. When I finished, and I will finish soon, you can then come in and ask questions and we can discuss. So what I have in the model here is just one target. I said I want to have enough money. I want to have enough money in my foreign reserve to be able to pay for my import. That's what I want. Therefore, my target will be to compare what I have to what I want and to adapt the price, that means the exchange rate, to my desire. Because in fact, it is the price of a commodity, the stock of a commodity that determines its price. When you sell anything, if you want to increase the price, you know, you reduce your supply. If you want to increase if you want to increase the price, you reduce your supply. If you want to decrease the price, you release more supply. And it's exactly the same mechanism that is occurring between the exchange rate and the foreign reserve, because the foreign reserve is just a commodity. Remember that the Naira is the only legal currency in Nigeria, and you cannot sell it. You can only use it to transact. So you buy dollars or you sell dollars. You do not sell Naira. It doesn't work like this, right? Good. So you manage your dollar as commodity. So what do? Well, you compare what you desire. That means the amount of money that you need to pay for your export, for your import, which is your foreign outflow, to what you have in your reserve. And if you divide what you have but by what you deserve, you have the proportion of what is missing. And if you look at the proportion of what is missing, you can have a policy that determines the price that you should have in order to get what you have. And that drives your desired exchange rate. And the desired exchange rate, which will be just the actual exchange rate multiplied by the correction. And then you feed that back into the system, you have a new exchange rate, and you loop one more time. And what this loop is a balancing loop. It's not at all a reinforcing loop, as the article that Dr. Sobank presented suggest. It is not. It is a balancing loop. It is an essential balancing loop. It has to be there, but it is not that loop that will make the Nigerian economy to grow. The loop that will make the Nigerian economy to grow is the loop that is stimulating the exports. And the loop that is stimulating the export has to do with production. So the solution to Nigeria's problem, and to many problems that are related to this critical problem, is economic growth. And growing at 3 or 4% per year, when you have a population that grows at more than 2%, is not enough to achieve success. If you want to achieve success, you have to grow at 5, 6, 7, maybe 8% per year, right? And I believe, honestly, that the federal government may have understood that, and Tinubu may want to achieve this. And if this is so, then you will see progress. But what I can tell you right now is that I think the policy of stabilizing the exchange rate has been successful. And you can see it now. I looked at the numbers yesterday, and yesterday the foreign reserve was $42 billion, and the exchange rate was significantly below 1,500 for a dollar. I personally believe that it will continue to come down, because what has been achieved has discouraged speculation. And it is speculation that took the exchange rate so low. But even now, the exchange rate is still under represented. The Naira is worth a lot more, in my opinion, than 1,480 something. It should come down. I guess it is possible that it comes down before 1,000. When? I don't know. But this is what I would, if the policy is continued, if the management of the interest rate is done properly, and I think the central bank is determined to do that, then, and if, of course, there is actions are being taken to grow the economy. And the problem, of course, is that to grow the economy, you need a low interest rate. And to have a low interest rate, you have to have an exchange rate which is much better than 1,400. So you see, everything is connected in the economic system. So basically, this is the presentation of the model. But you know, it makes sense. It is simple, you know, because I've tried to make things as simple as possible, but it is not simpler. So what you have to remember is that a balancing loop does not generate economic growth, but it generates stability. That is an essential condition for economic growth. But economic growth must be generated by reinforcing loop. Thank you very much, all of you, for your attention. I'm ready for your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Prof. This was very, very helpful. I was just saying to myself that I will skip other engagements for meeting like this. So I will let Modi go first with his questions. I also have a couple of questions, and then we can take others. All right, Modi, do you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you very much. This is quite an interesting engagement. Thank you, Prof, for lecturing us. I have two questions. When you say exchange rate is a price, so by default is a stock, isn't exchange rate a relative price dependent on other price? So Naira is valued at X based on the value of USD. And if that's the case, wouldn't that make it a flow instead of a stock? Second question, when on the left side of the CLD, when you say export supply, is this based on is there a scenario where this is based on the quality of the export? Say in Nigeria, for instance, we have always exported crude, but crude oil that is, and then we import added value added at a particular premium. Regardless, Nigeria is always going to export crude, whether processed as is the case now. So is it a function of the quality of what you export as compared to quantity? I guess that's my question when it comes to export supply. And to piggyback on that question, where does sentiment come into this? Because sometimes even if you're an export-based economy, be it a product or a service, there are sentiments that come into your economy based on the global dynamics of things, which of course would then affect your exchange rate value. So those are my two questions. I would imagine they're loaded, but thank you.
Okay, should I answer the questions now? Yes, let me answer the question now, because if you all ask your question in a row, I will forget. So, my dear Modibo, I know you very well, and you are breaking one of my rules now. What we agreed is what we will keep things simple, and you are making them complicated, right? But I will try to answer. First question, you ask about the exchange rate. The exchange rate is a price because it is how many naira you have to disburse to get $1. That's what it means, right? In this model, right? So it is the price. It is exactly the same thing as how many naira you have to disburse to buy a kilo of potatoes or an SUV or a private jet. Is exactly the same. What you can do with naira is buy things. That's right. This is how I look at it. So in that particular case, the exchange rate is the price of a commodity, and the commodity is the dollar or if any other. So it's a basic stock and flow system, and you don't the difference. A very nice way a nice rule of thumb to distinguish stocks from flows, which is sometimes not easy, is to look at it and to say, okay, does that variable as a unit of time? And if there is no unit of time, then it is a stock. For example, Forex reserve is in dollars. It's not in dollars per month or in dollars per year. Okay? And exchange rate is in Naira, and it's not in Naira per day. It's exactly the same thing as the difference between your bank account and how much money you put on it or you remove from it. So that's for your first question. For your second question, what I call export supply here is just the amount of goods and services that you are able to sell abroad to generate an inflow of forex. That's all. That's all it is. And so if you want to go into details, if you want to go into analysis, and of course, if you develop a more complex model, this is not a model that you would use for policy analysis, but it's a model that you use to make people to understand the basic principles. And that is, if you want, that is the first step that you take when you move from your mental model to your first formal model, your first stock and flow diagram, or your first causal loop diagram. And then, of course, you improve. You told me yourself in one of our many discussions that a model is a piece of art. And you are very, very right. A model is a piece of art that you improve over time. So this is the meaning of that model is just to try to explain a process and to show how a process can be explained well without mistakes, but very simplified. Any expert in system dynamics will say, yes, that is fine, but it's not enough. And of course, it's not enough. And you are very right to indicate that there are a lot more to exporting than just what do you export? Is the quality of what you export? Is the range of the products that you export? Is the competition? Is how you prepare your market? Is the marketing? And all this should be in a model. And you have to develop your model, to make your model more complex, as long as adding complexity to your model adds information. When it stops adding information, or when the information that you are adding is enough, then you stop there. And you also have to be careful that if you want to attract people, to make people interested in system dynamics, and I think it's your job here in the chapter, you have to keep things simple. Otherwise, you will piss them off, and sorry for the language, and they will go home and they will stop listening to you. So you always have a balance between the two. And in that sense, you are very correct to say that modeling is an art. I hope I have answered your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Prof, for that explanation. You actually touched on one of the questions that I had, because I know Modi did drop this before in the chat. Sometimes when we see certain words like rate, and based on our understanding of naming, nomenclature, and system dynamics, it feels like when you say a word with rate, then it's like actual rate, but this is not rate over time. So I guess the other thing would be from the causal loop diagram that we have, which of these loops do you think is important for us to focus on? And I totally agree with you, Prof, about like, just giving as much detail when developing any crisis system dynamics artifact that you want to share, because this reminds me of a time when I was doing this sort of presentation, but to farmers, and I was trying to explain to them how producing more doesn't necessarily translate into higher prices. But then I had to include polarities. And so just like you said, there are some that might even struggle with understanding the polarities for the linkage across variables. So maybe you want to just explain to us so that I can actually map which of these loops or which of these variables do you think are like very critical to what we have on our screen?
Yeah, well, you are also asking an interesting question, and this is, it goes a bit further than what is elementary. In fact, here you have only one loop. And the one loop that you have is the loop which is bringing the exchange rate to the Forex reserve. When you have a relationship, look, if the exchange rate is a price, therefore the exchange rate is part of a supply-demand process, right? And this is what everybody in secondary school studies, the supply, demand, and price. So you have the price, that is the exchange rate, is influencing what you sell and is influencing what you buy. What you sell and what you buy influence your wallet, the money that you receive or the money that you spend. And the money that you receive and the money that you spend, in fact, are influencing the state of your wealth. And the state of your wealth makes you feel whether you want to be richer or whether you can afford to be poorer. And that affects back your price. And when the two of them agree, when your Forex outflow and your Forex inflow are the same, right? Your Forex reserve is not changing, and your Forex reserve and your desired Forex reserve are the same. So you don't have to change your price again. It is there, it is stabilized, and it doesn't move. So in fact, you have two loops. You have a positive and you have a negative, or at least you are a reinforcing and you are a balancing. But the reinforcing and the balancing are creating the result of this because you have an adjustment, is that what matters really is the loop that goes from, okay, let's start foreign reserve. You start from foreign reserve, then you look at the fraction of your target that is fulfilled, and your target is the difference between what you want and what you have. And what you want is determined by how much you need, right? How much money you need. So this fraction of your target that is fulfilled uh, creates a correction that is determined by a policy. This is a little bit more complicated to introduce in your model. But for those who are interested in having this model simulating, I can give you the model with the equations and with the data, and you can simulate it yourself. And you can see that it will balance in any way, right? And if you want so when it balances at a certain level, then it doesn't move again. You have an exchange rate that is stable and you have a forex reserve that is stable. But if now you continue to change your target because you say, well, my desired forex reserve can be more than just what I need to pay for my import, but I also want to have some money in order to be able to defend the naira. And if you look at the policy of the government, this is exactly what they did. They first allowed the naira to collapse because they knew there would be a lot of speculation. In other words, you see, in my country, we say, if you want scrambled eggs, you have to break the eggs. And this is the policy that I guess the government has chosen to do. They knew it would be painful at the beginning, but I don't think there was any way to do it in another way. Now, the question that it was, I think, legitimate to ask was, would it have been possible to stabilize the exchange rate without allowing it to fall so low? That is a good question, and it's not obvious to answer that question because there was a lot of you know of possibility for the speculation to take place. But now they have almost eliminated the speculation, and this is why I believe that the naira will continue to appreciate. Right. So once you have a stabilization, you can say, okay, I want to improve my target, so my desired foreign reserve will come up again. And then you can continue the process, and then the naira, the price of the cost of the cost of the dollar will continue to fall. And if the cost of the dollar continues to fall, that means that your exchange rate will improve, and you will create more conditions for economic growth. So for that model to be really interesting, it has to be connected with an economic growth model, which determines the level of exports.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't agree less about how this particular causal loop diagram or model that we have needs to be a part of something bigger for us to pretty much understand. And also, this is kind of like a goal-seeking behavior that we're going to find from what we have, right? Would I be right in saying that? Yes.
See what I will do. I will send you not only this stock and flow. This causal loop diagram is very simplified. You don't have the parameters, for example, that are running the thing. I will send you the thing with all the parameters, with their value, and with the equations, and with the Vensim software. So you can run it, and you can see that there is no growth here. Always you will have the thing will stabilize. If you want growth, then you have to plug. See, economics is a very complex thing, but the great advantage of system dynamics, it allows you to create a system of subsystems, and this is what the economy is all about. And it's just an aspect of what system dynamics can do. You guys know very well that system dynamics can apply in so many different fields. And I would be very happy to see some other, example of application of system dynamics which have nothing to do with economy. I've done a lot of models which have little to do with macroeconomics, which are more in terms of general management. So that's the. But I think the general idea of relating reality to formal modeling through a mental model is the best way to disseminate system dynamics, and I congratulate you to have organized that thing. It's very interesting and a very good idea.
Yes, thank you for this, Prof. One thing I should say is we definitely should have a part two of this conversation where we have you could show a Venn model that simulates this, and then we can actually see more of what you've talked about. Then we definitely need to, I think this is like the way forward, having a part two of this conversation. And also for us to find a way to explain this to the wider community. One of the things you did share was like the initial policies that the current government kind of put in place had like there was like this downturn before like the better days. And then we can actually kind of like, show what archetype that is, how things get worse before they get better, and maybe some behavior over time graph. Because if we look at this model from policies that are in place, we might be able to understand the direction of the economy based on the policies. Maybe have some conversations within ourselves, bring in other people who are well aware of what is happening in the economic space to explain, and then we can put forward something that is easy for the general public to understand and maybe give hope to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you are very right. Absolutely. I completely agree with what you say. I think, one of the things that you guys could do would be to, we started this whole thing because there was an article published by somebody who made some statements and referred to system thinking and system dynamics. And I think it would be a good idea to write back. There was a report. I don't know how Dr. Sobank get the original paper, because I guess the original paper was not what was published. But we can use it was published in The Guardian. There was a report on that presentation by the General Director of the Budget Office. We can write to The Guardian and have our write-up published. We can, and we write collectively. We write as the System Dynamic Society of Nigeria, and let them publish this. And then you start a discussion, and you create an awareness. And if you continue to do it like this, you will attract more people. You will generate more interest, and little by little, the range of people that are interested will grow. And this is how you develop a discipline, and that will open also the door for training programs, for things like this. I think that's really the job of, and it should be not only in economics, but you are right. In economics, it's important. It's important that people understand. See, Nigeria has a lot of catch up to do from an economic perspective, and the reason why it is so is because Nigeria has created a mentality of rentier, of people who are used to collect money from work that they have not done themselves, and that is what, unfortunately, the oil has brought in this country. And now there is a realization that this is going to finish, and you have to do it in a different manner. So the price to pay is a little bit high, but definitely there is hope for this country. I am absolutely convinced of that. It's just a question of political will, and it's also a question of every one of you being involved. And I also believe that the only generation that can change things is your own. if your own generation does not change things, it will be probably even more difficult to change things in the future. So you are very important. You are a key. You know, in the chronology of Nigeria, you are at a key period of time. But if you are successful, I am quite convinced that Nigeria can do very, very well internationally. Yes, it's obvious to me.
Wow, that's quite helpful. Thanks for giving us that. I don't know if there's anyone who has something. Yes, Victor, please, you can unmute.
Yeah, the moderator. Thank you. Thank you, Prof, for this wonderful presentation tonight. I wish we have had this like a month before. The part two that the part two of the conversation that Kelechi is talking about would have scheduled it to come up by next week Wednesday, which is October 1st, because this kind of event or conversation would have been good when the Independence Day is a day to or during or just a day after, would have gathered, would have done make it a kind of a open conversation, do form of publicity around it, where we invite people to listen to this kind of conversation. Because to be candid, this is the actual thing the government needs at this point in time. But this kind of model will find a way of encouraging and motivating the government at the West. And I know they would have find a way of even looking inward and want to listen to what we are saying, that, okay, it's like these people are speaking our mind, because as you have said, rightly said the other time, the best thing for them to have done is to allow the dollar to get to its max, to the max, and then see what we can do to bring it down. That's what they have done. And if they can actually see a kind of model or a kind of mental model, a kind of model that suggests that, I think they would be happy to pick interest in it. So that did that as it may. On this work we have done, that there is no how we won't have the second part of it, which is sure. But also, I've already started a kind of a conversation with people in within the media space, trying to see how we can get the one you sent earlier, how we can get it published. And advice I had was to that we have to look for the publisher, the Guardian man that published the Director General's statement. So if you can get in touch with him, then it will be a very good avenue to publish, so that kind of just be a kind of a rejoinder to what he has published before and some other things around it. But if you want to go through, if you don't get through him and still want to publish in the Guardian, it demands that is not in line with what they have. Hello, am I still audible?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I don't know where I stopped the other time.
No, it's okay. You can continue. I just lost you for a couple of seconds. You are back now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I said I'm been in conversation with people in the media space to see how we can get those that article published in the Guardian. But I was advised to try Guardian first, and if the publisher is not trying to accept it, then we can look for do a kind of look for another paper. I mean, another media house to do the publication. However, I'm trying to also let us not to be in conflict with the government, or the articles to suggest that we are telling the government that they are wrong. No. I think what we are actually after is to promote the system, the application of system dynamics, and people that once people are aware, then they can do the simulation themselves. They can that can help them to change their mental model, and the rest is the obey the history. I think that is what should be focused on. So once again, I want to say thank you and thank you and thank you. And we'll use this CLD alone to see how we can. I don't know if we should also, in the publication, can we show this model? Can we publish this causal loop diagram as well, or just the statement alone? Or we should publish the one by the budget, the budget DG, then also put this one. I don't know how you want us to go about it.
You can publish. You see, if you look at my write-up,
Yes, sir.
the write-up that is just before the model, it's the way I think I agree with you that, you see, we want to make a friends of the we want to make friends with the people that are using system thinking and system dynamics. We don't want to make enemies of them. So we have to congratulate them for using this approach, and we have to try to be as diplomatic as we can to tell them, but look, we have some knowledge about it, and we can help you to do a better job. You see, and I think that's the way. But I agree with you. I think even being able to interact with the author of the paper would also be a very good idea. And you never know, he may want his own people to get training about it. You don't know the kind of opportunities that can come from interacting with people. The most important, I think, is to create a discussion, an interaction with those who are at the origin of the discussion. And the person who is at the origin of this discussion is, in fact, the Director General of the Budget Office. So it would be nice to communicate with him and to get him to react to what we say. Hello?
Yes, that's very good. Definitely need to follow up that conversation, Prof. I don't know if Mr. Blake, you can unmute to make your comment. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kelechi. Thank you all. A very beautiful evening to everybody. I really quite enjoyed this presentation. It's as simple as possible, and I think it is also clear. Modi raised an issue about sentiment. The model is just to explain to us the interaction that is happening within the economy without anything. But if we want to make it specific to Nigeria, then the question Modi raised becomes very important. That is, was it bias he used, or what language did he use? And then Prof himself also used the word political will. So if you want to make this model specific to Nigeria, well, the model is for Nigeria, but it's without any bias. It's like, it's not made, even though it's for Nigeria, it's trying to explain what is happening in Nigeria, but it's taking away ownership, let me call it like that. Because when you bring in ownership, it now means you have to bring in a variable that will explain the way the government behaves, whether the political will improves or or the political will declines. You understand? And if you want to take on the publication in the Guardian, it is very important that that is introduced. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. Just like I said, we definitely need to have a follow-up. Yes, Ngozi, please, you want to speak?
Yeah, good evening to everyone, and thank you very much, Prof, for starting this conversation. Helping the chapter to start this conversation. My thinking is that we should get the original statement if we want to respond to what's the policy of the government. Because what we are using right now is reported speech. So we don't know who introduced the systems thinking angle to it. Whether it's the government that said so, or is it the way the publisher paraphrased? Because I have actually tried to look for the statement, the way the government official made it, but I've not seen anything, any direct statement, quoted statement that suggests that the person was speaking from a systems thinking, systems modeling point of view. So I think we still need to get the exact statement that the person made to help us to know how exactly to frame our response to this. If we are not able to, I will just suggest that we put out this as the way Prof has presented it, to say to the public, this is how this works. So that will be my own take on this. Because for me, right now, I am not sure. I don't know if any other person is sure that the government presented this case from a systems dynamic and modeling point of view, or is it the reporter that reported it in that manner? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that addition. I strongly believe that a lot of what we do as human beings have some form of like system thinking. We might not be very, it might not be intentional, it might not be something that we do consciously, but it will make more sense to see if there was some systems thinking ideology behind any of the policies or in this particular publication. Yeah, okay. So I don't know, just to be conscious of our time, we will definitely get back to the chapter as to what the next steps are. But I think before we go, I don't know if there's anyone with any last words, and Prof as well to give any last words.
Yes,
Can I make
if
a quick
anybody
point?
has the publication, you should send it to the group, please.
Yes, okay. We'll definitely follow up on that.
Can I make a quick point?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, on the two previous speakers, the first person, I totally agree. The political will is a critical element, and we should talk about it, and it should be in the model. Remember that what I showed you is not a model, it's a diagram. It's just the start of a model. Now, I would advise the lady who spoke after to read the documents that we used in order to, and she will find the response to her question. I think it is the Director General of the budget that used system thinking to explain the political process and to explain the way the government operated in order to manage the exchange rate. And he did it in a way that is half scientific and half propaganda. And this is why I use the word propaganda. And but I understand it. He was doing his job. But then he went too far because he tried to explain that this thing could do more than what it could do. So please, lady, read very well the documents that we used in order to start that conversation, and you will have an answer to your question. It is definitely, and you were right to say that we are using system thinking all the time, even if we don't know about it. We all use models, absolutely. That's it. I'm not talking again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof, for this, and thank you everyone who have joined in and contributed. Prof, please also prepare yourself to maybe have a session with us where you can have like a live modeling session if possible, and just to explain this in our own context. But I think with that, thank you everyone once again for joining, and hope you have a good evening and wonderful week ahead. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you. Well done.
Bye, thanks.